one of the posts that I did in the lead up to this was talking about how self-awareness, I believe self-awareness is the single biggest learning that I've had personally to get me to where I am now, and then to help me to continue to grow into the person I need to be as my business grows. And so I think it's a really, really valuable conversation to have. And as you say, I think it flows on really nicely with what we've been talking about this morning.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it about self-awareness that makes it so important?
So, again, that's a massive question, isn't it? Where do I begin? I think to me, there's lots of layers to self-awareness. You know, the definition of self-awareness to me is I think about holding a mirror up and really taking a look at ourselves, like a really close look, because how we think we're coming across and how we think we're holding ourselves and presenting ourselves and communicating and behaving might not actually be what's being perceived by those around us. So I think being able to hold that mirror up and have the tools and have the skills to hold that mirror up and constantly be reviewing, reflecting, evaluating, pivoting, you know, asking ourselves what's working, what's not working, I think is really, really valuable.
You're doing great. I'm loving it. It sounds like for you, self-awareness is not only our own self-perception, but also awareness of how others perceive us. Is that on track?
Absolutely spot on. Yeah, absolutely. So when I said there's my belief is there's lots of layers to it. It starts with self. You know, we've all got some degree of awareness of how we operate. You know, like there might be someone who says, oh, you know, I know that I'm a real stickler for details, and I know it takes me a really long time to make a decision because I have to have all the information. Or, you know, there might be someone else who's like, I just put my needs last. I'm just more concerned about looking after everyone else and making sure everyone else is okay. And then I'll get to me, which we sort of know they sort of generally would never get to. So we've all got some degree of awareness. I think the next level down is understanding where that comes from, where those drives come from, where that motivation comes from, what actually is behind always putting someone else's needs ahead of our own. What's behind always wanting details before we can make a decision? What's behind putting our hand up and saying yes to everything and then finding ourselves overcommitted and stressed? You know, it's getting down below all of that and understanding what's behind it all. And then we can get to the next level, which is, understanding the differences between those around us. And that's when it starts to get really, really interesting, particularly for teams.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. So it sounds like what was sort of landing in my mind, and I'd love your correction if I'm off track, but it's like it's the behaviors and then the drivers and then get feedback from the external world. That's kind of how I'd sum up what you just said. I imagine I've missed a heap. Is that kind of on track?
Yeah, it's kind of on track. So there's this amazing quote from Carl Jung, and I just absolutely love it. And he says, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will guide our life and we'll call it fate. And I think that just sums up pretty much what I've rabbled on about and what you just summed up in a couple of sentences, in that until we can bring conscious awareness of why we do what we do, we will just think that that's how it is. And so when we can have conscious awareness of why we do what we do, why we operate how we operate, why we think how we think, why we say what we say, when we can bring conscious awareness of that, we can then look around us and say, well, am I getting the outcomes that I want to be getting from what I'm doing? And if I'm not, what can I do differently? So until we have that awareness of self, we can't sort of be looking to do anything differently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's moving from what's going on around me is fate to taking a level of ownership and responsibility in what we're doing. Yeah. So Lauren, and I hope I said your name right, has just said in the chat box, she's often heard to say perception is reality. It's so important to have your self-awareness radar on especially when you're in a service environment or in place of influence. How do you see perception is reality fitting into this self-awareness piece?
That's so a big part of
Yeah,
what I do when I'm when I'm teaching self-awareness, we start with perception, because that's, you know, that's sort of like what I said right at the start. How we think we're coming across might not actually be how we're being perceived at all. And particularly, I think of in terms of teams. You know, we can think we're being very very efficient and very productive, for example, and that might be how we think we're coming across. But our team or the people working with us are thinking, holy heck, you know, geez, she's a bit aggressive, she's a bit blunt, she's not very friendly, she's a bit cold.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really, really important to accept that our perception is not the only lens through which people are looking at a situation. And so, you know, that's what I keep coming back to. We have this awareness of self, and then we need to be aware that others are different, and how others are different, and how that means we're potentially coming across to them. And then it enables us to sort of tweak and pivot ever so slightly to ensure that we're getting the outcomes that we want from the people that we're interacting with.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've mentioned outcomes a couple of times, which I love. Mm-hmm. In terms of achieving outcomes, what's the first thing we need to develop awareness about within ourselves? Like self-awareness, yes. What specifically do we need to focus on in ourselves?
So I'll answer that question from a personal perspective, because I think if I trust you're okay with it, sharing a bit of my personal story will help put some relatability to sort of the theory or the high level concepts of what I'm saying. So by profession, I'm an accountant, and I studied business and economics at university, and I went straight into a graduate accounting role, and I've had a 15-year career in accounting and finance, in a variety of public practice and commercial finance roles. And whenever I sort of said to someone, you know, you'd meet someone new and they say, oh, what do you do? I say, oh, I'm an accountant. They're like, oh, you don't strike me as an accountant. And it would always kind of, you know, I'd sort of laugh it off. But then after you hear that time and time and time and time again, it's like, well why? You know, what is it about me that doesn't make me an accountant? And I started to sort of get into a bit of a hole. I'm like, am I not professional enough? Am I not, you know, am I not the image of an accountant? Am I not acting how I should be acting? And all of this was unconscious at the time, but I found myself starting to play a role within my work, and starting to say things how I thought I should say them, and act how I thought I should act, and, you know, behave and make decisions of how a professional accountant would do them, because I had so many people telling me that, you know, I didn't look like an accountant, and we all know nothing has meaning except the meaning we put to it. And what I put to that was I wasn't professional enough. I wasn't good enough. Yeah. And so I began to get myself in quite a hole, even though I was very good at my job and I had great relationships with my clients. You know, I'd be on the phone for hours talking to them. Like that wasn't enough. And so I've totally forgotten your question, but
what I'm noticing, I think so many people do it. We're given feedback and we assume it's a bad thing.
Yes.
And so this assumption, so someone says, you're not the normal accountant, and you kind of went, aren't I good enough? Aren't I worth, like, and went down that path, rather than, awesome, I stand out, I'm amazing. And I think that's exactly so often right. That's what's going on for a lot of people. Did you turn that around, or did you give up accountancy? I'm really curious.
Well, do you know what? It kind of, I went down to I did both.
Great.
So I got to the end of my public practice career. I was like, okay, I'm done. I'd lost my mojo for numbers. I'd lost my passion. I'd lost my drive. And I think Nicole earlier talking about how it's so important to have that why, to have that drive, that reason for doing what we do. And I'd lost that. And so I left that world and I went into commercial finance, and that was the door opening for me. That was the middle ground where I realized that, you know what, the skills that I do have, that relationship building, that being able to tweak and pivot and know how to talk to that person and how to talk to that person and how to talk to that person and how to get the best out of them. Like I could intuitively do that. And it was sort of...
Which isn't typically a skill an accountant has. So I can see why people would have said that you're not a typical accountant.
That is exactly right. But this job move corresponded with beginning my coaching journey and beginning my personal development journey as well. And so through all of that, I learned that we are all different. And just because I didn't fit the mold, I guess, or the common perception of what an accountant was, didn't mean that I wasn't worthy, didn't mean that I wasn't good enough.
Absolutely.
Didn't mean that I wasn't professional. It just meant that I had skills in other areas. And so I think, getting back to your very original question around why is that sort of so important, it's understanding that we are all different and we've each got access to a unique set of skills and gifts. We've got access to everything. Like I could be an accountant. Like I could do my job. I could be process driven. I could follow regulations. I could follow a structure. I could follow a system. It exhausted me. Like I was exhausted by the end of the day, but I could do it. And I think what I've learned over the years is that it's okay to be different. We don't have to sort of be playing a role to fit in.
Yeah. I think that's so key. The awareness that we don't have to play the role to fit in. Yeah. And that takes a level of like deep self-knowing to be able to say that and mean that and live that congruently, which I imagine for you started with self-awareness. What was the transition for you, like as you discovered who you were and that it was okay to be you, to feeling that ingrained, it's okay that we're all different? How did you make that transition? It's okay, because I think it's even more than it's okay that we're all different. It's okay that I'm different tends to be the piece. Like a lot of people, it's okay that everybody else is different. But
that's exactly right. Yeah.
How did you make that transition, or how would you advise people make that transition?
That is a never-ending journey, I believe. And it's not one, and we've talked about it already this morning, it's not one that I recommend people do alone. I certainly didn't do it alone. Couldn't do it alone. I have an amazing support network around me, and one thing that through this journey I've found extremely challenging and extremely painful but very necessary is making sure that the people around me are people that lift me up and are people that have got my back and are people that support me. And I think there are so many of us, might be a sweeping generalization, but I'll go with it anyway. I think there are so many of us that keep people around us because we feel we ought to, because we feel we need to. And they might not be the most, I don't know how to say it, they might not be the right people that we need around us. They might not be the people that we need to be listening to. And it's a painful process, really looking in on ourselves and discovering what we need personally to move ourselves forwards. But it's a very, very necessary one. So in terms of answering your question, have the right people around us. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's so key for both of the reasons that you've given. One is to get the accurate reflection back, and two is the support that they're there for us.
Yeah.
Like they're there with us. Sometimes I think finding the right people comes, like it's this balancing act between finding the right people and having our own self-awareness to know who the right people are. Yeah. Have you found that it's kind of a journey, and there's people that were the right people in moments for you and then you've outgrown them? And then
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, somebody on LinkedIn, someone in my network asked me as part of this talk whether I'd be talking about reflection, I don't think that was the exact word that he used, or evaluation or reevaluation. And I was like, yes, it is that process of reflection, of reevaluation, of constantly checking in, of constantly asking ourselves, am I doing the best that I can? What's working really well? What's not working? What's challenging me right now? What do I need? That constant reflection is absolutely paramount. And absolutely, there comes a point where it's like, okay, this is what I need right now. And I get that, and I got that. And then you reach the point where you're like, you know what? This is what I need now. I need to step up. I need to step up. And that's quite a scary thing, because I know one of our mentors, all of our collective mentors, says, you know, it's always best to be sort of the smallest fish in the room, if you like. Be around people that scare us, be around people that lift us up, because if we're in a room where we feel 100% comfortable and we feel like we're top of the food chain, there's only so far that we can grow. So it is about constantly stepping up and constantly reevaluating who we're listening to, who we're getting feedback from, who we're checking in on, but absolutely having the strength to check in personally as well, and not always rely on external to guide us, because ultimately it's got to come from us.
I think that's great, in that acknowledging we need those external impacts, and then we also need to check in ourselves. So there's external feedback and an internal check. Ellie's just popped in the chat box. Wouldn't this constant reevaluation be exhausting? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just noticed that question. Thank you, Ellie. It's a really interesting one. So again, I'll share my personal insight, and it might sort of help with a bit of context around this. So I am someone who is I think very high level. I'm very conceptual. I'm very visionary. And I don't do detail too well, but what I do and what I do find myself doing a lot is I'm that person that puts my hand up to everything. I want to be involved in everything, and I want to be a part of everything, and I just go. And then all of a sudden I can hit a wall, and I can just collapse, and I'll get sick, and I'll be like, what just happened? And so by saying, isn't the constant reevaluation exhausting? I would say not doing it for me is exhausting, because when I don't constantly check in with myself, when I don't reflect on, you know, what's working, what's going, why am I doing that? Like, why do I keep saying yes? What is it that I'm scared of? You know, do I think people aren't going to like me anymore if I say no to an opportunity? If I'm not doing that checking in, I run the risk of burning myself out. So for me personally, I think it's more exhausting not to be checking it. And
I'm curious, just acknowledging the map is not the territory. What does constantly mean? Like, it's not every instant and every moment. What's constantly for you? Because if you're very big picture, I'm guessing it's so someone who's detailed is every second of every day is going to hear constant, like that's how they're going to hear constantly. So what does constantly mean to you?
Absolutely, and that was where I was going next. Thank you. It's so for me personally, when I say constantly, I mean that, you know, so I journal. I journal a lot, and I don't, by a lot, I don't mean every day. I mean, I started a journal, what was it, probably about 3 years ago, and I'm still in my same notebook. So I mean, it's the constant exercise of doing it. So I might go 2 months without writing anything in there, or I might be going through a period of time where I'm really facing a lot of challenge, in which case I will ask myself questions every day. But at a very minimum, constant to me is, you know, every couple of weeks, check in.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going? And it literally, it doesn't need to be a big exhaustive exercise either. It might just be 5 minutes. And it sounds a bit crazy, but those with kids might relate. It's like going and shutting yourself in the toilet, locking the door, putting the extractor fan on so you can't hear that, Mom, and just having a minute, like just having a moment, like that's what checking in is. Like, is what I'm doing right now getting me to where I need to be? Am I focusing on the right things, or am I focusing on the wrong things? Is the fact that my 6-year-old is sat outside the toilet door waiting for me to get out a cue to me that perhaps I've been focusing on some of the wrong things? Is asking those little questions in the moment. It's not like a big exhaustive exercise that needs to take 3 hours every week. So like constantly, it's just asking myself these little questions. Am I on track? Am I doing the right thing?
Yeah. I get a sense that it's consistently is kind of, it's just, and it's in those moments where you notice something, just allowing yourself the space, even if that does mean, and I totally resonate with the, like, locking yourself in the bathroom. I had 4 kids under 6. I get it.
Wow. Yeah.
They're bigger now. They're much bigger now. But yeah, I totally get it. So, and it's that check-in. And I think, so Ellie's put in, it's that check-in with the higher values, and making sure that we are aligned. And I think for many people, they will resonate with when we're not doing that, when we're just on automatic pilot and moving through the motions, and we're not asking ourselves, are we aligned? It is more exhausting. I can certainly relate to that in my past as well.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something just then, Amy, that I'll pick up on if I may. You said, I can't remember your exact language, but it was something around being triggered, or when something comes up in the moment. And that's something that I've learned over the last 3 years of really developing my coaching skills and my looking inwards and learning about me, is that I've learned to, even physically in my body, you know, like when I'm triggered by something, if something happens, you know, I can feel physiologically like my body changes, I'll tense up, and it's that process of, okay, what's going on here? Like, let's just stop. Let's just take a moment. What's going on? What am I fearful of? What am I feeling? What do I need? It's those kinds of questions that can help us move forwards in the right direction, hopefully. But I will add, it's a journey. We don't get to the point where we go, that's it, I'm self-aware, I'm done. That's why I say it's a constant asking these questions. Am I on track?
Yeah. And I think a constant evolution.
Totally.
Who said the quote, but it's like from physics, you can only know the time, you can only know the location or the speed, never both. And so we can't know ourselves, and I know I'm adding stuff into your talk, I trust that's okay, but the moment we pinpoint who we are, we're not that version of us anymore, because we're constantly evolving and changing. So if we know the location, we don't know the speed. If we know the speed, we can't know the location. And I take that to our personal development. So that awareness is constantly, because who we are today, responding and reacting, tomorrow this conversation would be very different for both of us, and the next day, and there's this constant evolution.
And there's a piece that we need to get to with that as well, because as I say, like through my accounting career, I did play that role. I did dial up my very right and wrong, black and white, process-driven energy, and I slipped into that world. And so for me, sort of starting to let some of that go again, and not having the answer, of not knowing who I was at any one moment. But at the same time, knowing exactly who I was. I trust that's making sense. You know, that was something that it's still, it's a little bit head trippy sometimes. It's like, well, I've got to be okay with the fact that this is a journey, and that I don't know everything, and I don't know where I'm going to be tomorrow. I don't know the path that I'm going on, but I'm starting to learn more and more about myself. And you know, for me, gut instinct and following my intuition, I'm very driven by my intuition. So I'm learning to tune into that and tap into that, and just be at peace and go, you know what, it's going to be okay. And I think the time that we're in right now is a real a real opportunity to test that, if you like, you know, where I live, and I think, Amy, where you are as well, you know, we had a devastating summer of bushfires. Like, it was just like, it's right there. This threat is on our doorsteps. And, you know, it really forced me to look inside myself and draw things out of myself that I had to in order to survive. And at that point, it really was that sort of prehistoric, like literally survival. I think what we're going through right now with COVID is similar to some extent, but we don't have that direct threat right in our faces. It's a little bit more distant, but it's still given us the opportunity to draw things out of ourselves. Like, what can I find deep inside me that can help me get through this? I think it's a really great opportunity for us all to sort of stop and just and really listen into what we each individually need.
Fleur's put, I think it's Fleur, has put in the comments that when she's more in the present moment, she can reflect easier. Where she's caught up in the busier, it's much harder. I think sometimes there's a place for both, like you say, that direct adversity. So I know I discovered way more about me. Our property was actually, so we lost our back fence and I defended the house. That level of challenge, I was definitely not present. Like, I was present in the moment because I couldn't be anywhere else, but I wasn't what most people would consider in that present. Like, it wasn't calm and grounded and meditative or anywhere near it. But I think sometimes in those meditative, calm, present, like deep breaths, I've locked myself in the bathroom, I'm just taking 5 minutes to meditate, I can discover me. Sometimes I find that adversity is more of what draws out the parts of me I've disconnected from. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would totally resonate with that. I think so. The methodology that I use, that I teach, you know, it's very, very simply, very, very high level. There's four different preferences, 4 different styles that we can come from. Now, I know that you know, we've talked about it a little bit already. That we can access all of them. We can dial up, we can dial down, and we can access all different parts of ourselves. In that situation, in that bushfire situation, following on from that, I found myself drawing on things unconsciously. You know, I found myself dialing up that very, we have got to get shit done. It's like, you know, it's very, very, we have got to get results. We have got to take action. Like, you know, I was stood there. I got myself all dressed up in the protective gear. I was working out hoses and valves and which way this turned and which way that turned. Where were the kids? What were they? You know, I was in action mode. And I totally get what you were saying around the fact that, like, I was not in a calm, happy Zen space right then. But it is in those moments that we draw on the parts of ourselves that we might not necessarily think we've got access to. So I think what leaders, what any of us right now should really be focusing in on is, you know, what is, let's have a look at how I'm handling myself. Let's have a look at how I'm operating, how I'm thinking right now, and be checking in. Is it different? What's changed? You know, what am I accessing? What am I finding I'm able to access right now that I maybe didn't think I could do? You know, maybe people didn't think that they could be very driven and being able to direct a fire crew. You know, maybe you know, our thinking is more, you know, it's, you know, a lot more sort of social and friendly, and I like to chat and get to know people before I give them direction. But no, when you've got fire approaching your house, you do that, you got it inside me. And I nurture that. Have you still got?
I've still just got you. I'm not sure if it's me or you with the internet issues. I think it could be me.
lost you into town to a co-working space where I'm working alone.
So while Claire's sorting her internet, what about we share
access to much more reliable Wi-Fi? So I hope it's not me.
So I think they can hear me clearly, Claire. While we're just waiting for Claire to see what she can do with that, what are you guys loving so far? Just type into the chat box so that when Claire comes back, we've got some gold to share with her. What are the questions coming up for you? What are you loving so far? What are you discovering about yourselves as you're listening to this conversation? Just pop that in the chat box while we deal with the internet. And this would be us embracing challenge, embracing resilience, bringing self-awareness, whatever is coming up. You're kind of coming in and out, Claire. I don't know if you can quite hear me. I don't know if they can hear me because I'm not getting any comments in the chat box. Yeah, beautiful. Cool. So just, yeah, great. So just what are you noticing in yourself as we're kind of exploring this, and what are you loving so far about this conversation? Just pop in the chat box. So we'll just go to, yeah, great question, Ellie. Great question. Some of the techniques, and I'm sure Claire has a resource that she's going to share for someone to get started on that journey of self-awareness. What else are you guys loving or learning or appreciating about the conversation so far? And I'm just going to check in with the team, or the team's going to check in with me and see if we've checked in with Claire. Great. So Claire's just sent me a message. She said she's here, but she can't speak. I'm wondering if that... There we go. There's the audio. We've got you back.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. I love it.
Yay! So this is I missed what you obviously spoke about when I logged off and logged back on again. But this is behavioural flexibility in action.
Absolutely. So
we can't control what's going on around us. We just control our reaction to it. So
that's it. I think it's a great demonstration of how we respond and bringing our self-awareness. So Ellie asked in the chat box, what are a few techniques that you can share with us to start someone in their journey of self-awareness?
Oh, that's a fantastic question, Ellie.
It is an awesome question.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I work with clients to create. I use a tool, a profiling tool that essentially becomes the mirror that holds up, and we've then got a physical, right here, physical, tangible document that becomes our mirror, and it becomes the basis of the coaching and the training and the programs that I do. But in very, very simple terms, I was talking earlier about the four sort of preferences, and anyone familiar with DISC or Myers-Briggs, they're very similar in that they're based on the same sorts of psychological preferences. So we can have a look, we can have a check-in to ourselves, and we can look and we can say, am I an action-oriented person? Am I someone who's just driving constantly, just working hard, but working hard at the right things, very driven, very action-oriented, very results-oriented? Or if on the flip side, we can say, am I perhaps someone who's more focused on people and how what we're doing affects the people around us? Am I very values-based, for example? Am I a social person, enthusiastic, energetic, dynamic, just wanting to be involved in everything? Or am I the facts, the data, the information, the statistics, the process? So there's the four very distinct groups that we can sort of start from. It's about asking ourselves questions and thinking about what really drives us. Is it the feeling that we get? Is it people, or is it a thing, a tangible thing? And we're more coming from a logical perspective. So Yeah, there's some great little check-ins that we can do, and I can provide. I might do that actually. I might pop a little PDF together, and I'll get Yaja to send it out in the email that comes out after this, with some things to look out for in ourselves, because it's about how we have our desk space set up, how we like to interact with people. So I'll include a little checklist in the information that comes around after this session.
That sounds awesome.
Thanks for the question, Ellie.
Yeah, and I think that's so key, is that while we can just sit and reflect, we often need to know the questions to ask ourselves to reflect on. And I think that that's one of the biggest gaps that a lot of people who are I want to be more self-aware, but they're building their awareness based on their existing awareness and not getting that external input. And so something like the tool you're describing is perfect for bringing new awareness for us to become aware about. And then we the awares repeat, and it gets weird and mind-blowing. But
absolutely, and to kind of put that into to translate that into a context, how I describe the tool and what I do is, imagine when back in the time when we were allowed, we're walking down the street and we're feeling really good, and we're like, we're doing our thing. We're maybe going to a meeting, or going to meet a friend for coffee, or we're going to work, and we're feeling awesome. And then we walk past a shop window, which is all bright, glossy, and we catch a sight of our reflection. And that amazing jacket that we put on, feeling all great this morning, we realize that we've got it tucked into our pants at the back. Or like our hair that we thought was perfect, we realize is all sticking up all over the place. So like, we don't know what we don't know. So to sit and just make a decision, what, today I'm going to start my journey of becoming more self-aware. It's really, really hard to do it on our own. And that's where having tools and resources to be that initial mirror is really, really vital and really important. It sort of sets us off on the path that we need to be on.
Yeah. Yeah. So having the tools, the resources as the mirror is essential. Creating the time and allowing ourselves to ask the questions, and then connect. Can we then do it on our own, or do we still need connection? What are your thoughts?
I come from the preference of speaking to think. And it drives my husband absolutely batty, because he'll just get to the point where he's like, just stop. He's like, too many words, stop. Because I like to talk, and I like to bounce ideas. So to answer that question, someone who comes from a very similar place to me, they are going to need people to be constantly bouncing off. And hey, I noticed I'm doing this, and what do you think that means? And how do you reckon I can sort of dial up some more of this energy? Those types of people are going to need the constant bouncing. There are others that are going to be like, right, I got this. Cool, I've got this. Now, there will still be benefit, I believe, in coaching conversations. Particularly in teams, and this is what I love. This is why I love doing what I do with teams, because everybody has the same mirror, everybody has the same report, and so it's really easy to say, right at the start of each weekly meeting, grab your profiles out and each read one statement from this section, and it just helps keep everything front and center of people's minds, but it also gives people a level of reflection that they might not otherwise have seen in themselves. So it's like someone could read out a statement and be like, yeah, but that's not me, and then the whole rest of the team be like, yeah, that's exactly you. And you can be like, what? How? What? Why? Give me an example of that. And then it just starts the conversation in a team. And that's where the power really comes from. Having a profile of whatever it is, whatever tool, it doesn't matter. That's just the mirror. It's the conversations, and it's the learning, and it's the coaching, and it's the development that comes from that. That's where the real magic happens. The change doesn't come from having something like this. The change comes from the conversations and the development afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so key, and it comes back to where we started the conversation. The self-perception is only one piece of this puzzle. We need to get the input of the other's perception, as well as using the tools and the resources. I feel like that's quite well-rounded. Laurelyn's put a beautiful comment in around intuition and feeling like people that aren't as connected with their intuition tend not to be as connected with other people's perceptions. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that. So does self-awareness impact others' awareness, or others' awareness impact self-awareness, or some combination there? What do you think on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I've said, that there's at a very high level, we can break a population down into 4 preferences. Yeah. I'm not pigeonholing, I'm not labeling, I'm just trying to keep things high level and contextual for this conversation. Some of those people are going to come from a place of feeling and an emotion, and be a lot more values driven as a preference I'm talking about. Yeah. There will be other people that prefer to come from a place of logic and fact and reason. And we've each got access to all of that, but absolutely, yes, there will be people that find it a lot easier to tap into emotion. And I think Madhu's going to talk more on emotional intelligence a bit later on. So it'll be really interesting to hear how she develops the conversation from here. Yeah. But I will say that although there are people that can access those feelings and that intuition more easily, that's not to say that it is impossible for everyone to do. It is something learned. It is something we can learn, and it is a skill that we can develop if we want to. It will just be a lot easier for some than others.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Do you find as people increase their self-awareness, they increase the awareness of others and their relationships shift?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is where this work becomes really exciting when working with a team, because I could go into a team that's highly dysfunctional at the start, because everyone is just so focused on their own agenda. And by the end of it, it's like, oh, okay, well, now I understand myself a lot better. And because I understand myself a lot better, and I'm aware of sort of where I fit, if you like, where my preferences are coming from, I'm aware that there's other preferences as well. And actually, I can see that in you, and I can see that in you. So if I'm this and you're that, then maybe I need to spend a bit more time having a bit of pleasantry chit chat before I bark my orders at you. Or maybe you're the type of person that really doesn't engage, really doesn't sort of thrive on that chit chat. So I'm just in and out with you. And so absolutely, when we've got that awareness of our preferences and where we're coming from, we can learn to recognize that in others. And when we're learning to recognize that in others, that's when we can tweak and pivot our behavior, particularly in a team environment, and even more importantly in times like now when there's so much stress and anxiety and uncertainty. We can be that certainty for each other, because we at least know that our relationship between ourselves is going to be respectful and is going to be stable and consistent. I mean, we're human. Like, I am going to put a caveat in here. We are human. And I'm not saying that any tool out there is going to stop emotional outbursts and stress and people saying things they shouldn't say. It's like, it's just always going to happen. We're not machines. Yeah. But we do have the ability to go, holy heck, what just happened there? Oh, whoops. I probably pushed a bit too hard, or I probably didn't give enough information. No wonder they felt stressed. And we can reflect, and we can debrief, and we can smooth the situation out much simpler.
Yeah, I think that comes back to what we were saying about learning through the challenges. It's not until we're in the conversations and in the relationship moments with people that we get that opportunity to work out who we can be and how we can respond differently. And that starts with us developing this sense of self-awareness, so that we notice what's going on in us and in them Yeah,
Absolutely.
This has been an epic conversation. I look forward to the handout that you're going to generously share with us. It's so delightful of you, which is wonderful.
Pleasure.
Just going to give the wonderful people in the chat box and on their screens and in their houses, and more than in the chat box because they're awesome, a chance to ask any questions. Is there anything you'd like to add while they pop in questions?
I'm totally captivated by all the questions myself. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah,
which is another element of my personality that I have to be very, very aware of, because I can be very easily distracted by things. But look, I mean, I trust I've come across and it made sense. This is a subject that I'm so passionately invested in. I could talk about it for absolutely hours, like you said with yourself, Amy, this morning. Yes. But I guess coming right back and reining it all in, the key takeaway that what I really wanted to get across is the fact that right now, whether we're leading a team or whether we are leading our families or whether we're just leading ourselves, we all have a responsibility to ensure that we're stepping up and being the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And going back to that Carl Jung quote, it's not just about accepting this is how I am and therefore this is what's always going to happen. We have got the ability to tap into absolutely everything we need within us to be whatever we need to be. We've just got to be open to it and have the support around us to enable that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That would be a gold space to end. Peter's popped a question in, though. Are you cool to answer his question?
Absolutely.
What are the best ingredients to build a successful team? I reckon that's a whole conversation in and of itself.
I reckon that's a whole conversation for a whole other webinar session. We're going to be asking for feedback, for suggestions for future things. So I think there's one right there. Peter, just to sort of touch on it really, really quickly, awareness really has to be the key there. Diversity in a team is absolutely paramount, but if each individual team member is not aware of the benefits and the advantages of the difference, then the benefit of it is kind of lost. So I think we really need to be nurturing awareness of self and awareness of others in our teams, and from there everything else can flow and stem. But it's really got to start with holding that mirror up and understanding the value that every single one of us brings to a team.
Yeah, I love that, because without that awareness and without that acceptance of the diversity, we will aim to make robots and have uniformity within the team. And so if we can bring awareness and acceptance to all of the different flavors, then that will make a successful team.
Absolutely. Spot